When the Prophet ﷺ started conveying his message to the people of Mecca, people responded in different ways. We have heard about the opposition, the ridicule, the persecution. But then there were some people who wanted to gather more information. And in doing this, they looked around to see who would know about the kinds of things that Muhammad ﷺ is telling us. Because by and large, many of these things were unknown to the people of Mecca. They had been lost in the paganistic traditions, culture, worship. A lot of the legacy of Ibrahim ﷺ had been lost. And then there were no prophets sent to that area from the time of Ismail ﷺ. So they said, let's go and ask the Jewish rabbis that live in Medina. And these rabbis had been living there for centuries, possibly some 400 years or so before the Prophet ﷺ was sent. So they went and they said, look, we have this prophet and he is telling us this and this and this. He's claiming to be a prophet of Allah. He's inviting towards these things. How do we know if he's real or not? You people also believe in prophets. You also have a prophet. So tell us something. So they told, and there are a few occasions in which this occurred. One of the questions that the rabbis told them to pose to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was, ask him if he knows how Bani Israel ended up in Egypt. And if he can answer this question, then he is in fact a prophet. When they came and they said, we have done some research and we have this inquiry for you. If you can give us a truthful answer, then we will accept you. And that question is, how did Bani Israel end up in Egypt? Now, the question is raised because Bani Israel is the other name for Yaqub alayhi salam. And Yaqub alayhi salam was raised and lived in the area of his forefathers, Ishaq alayhi salam, and Ishaq alayhi salam's father, Ibrahim alayhi salam. So Ibrahim alayhi salam settled at Baytul Maqdis in that area. Ishaq alayhi salam spent his life there. Yaqub alayhi salam was born there, raised there, spent his life there. And they lived in an area called Canaan. So why and how did they end up in Egypt? So in response to this question, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the entire Surah Yusuf. So this surah on one side answered this question in a very detailed way, so as to not leave any ambiguity, any doubt in anyone's mind. The entire story is given. And at the same time, the story is filled with hundreds and hundreds of lessons. Now, this is the background behind Surah Yusuf. So, as you know, the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam plotted against him. Now, there are two primary reasons why. One is that Yusuf alayhi salam and his full brother, Binyamin, were from another mother. They were from the other wife of Yaqub alayhi salam. Meanwhile, the other 10 brothers were from his first wife. So this was one cause of animosity, that they're half brothers, they're not full brothers. The second thing was that because of their good and pious nature, Yaqub alayhi salam paid a lot of attention to them. And it could also be that because they were already kind of like what we call the underdog, they were already being discriminated against. So Yaqub alayhi salam was even more sympathetic towards them. So he gave them even more love, more attention. And Yusuf alayhi salam, by from birth, he had proven to be a very, very clever, very intelligent, very wise young boy. And from the beginning, he started seeing these dreams. So he related this, one of his dreams, to his father Yaqub alayhi salam, that I see 11 stars prostrating to me. And I see the sun and the moon also prostrating to me. So Yaqub alayhi salam knew what it meant. And right away he told his son, do not tell this to your brothers. They're going to start plotting. Yaqub alayhi salam, so Yusuf is a young boy, but Yaqub alayhi salam knows, he understands the situation, he understands the animosity, the opposition that is on the verge of hatred, and he knows what the boys are capable of doing. Don't share this. So from this, we learn the lesson that whenever, particularly with dreams, you don't tell dreams to, like is mentioned in one hadith, that illa habiban aw labiban. When you have a dream, a good dream, then and you need an interpretation for it, then don't share that dream except with someone who is very dear to you, who is very sincere with you, or somebody who Allah has given the intelligence of figuring out what it actually means. Don't go share your dreams. Don't go post your dreams on Facebook. I saw this and this and that. Why? Because it will draw the jealousy, the anger, and that kind of, it will evoke that response from people. That, oh yeah, who does he think he is? Who does she think she is? And so on and so forth. So, the brothers were already plotting in the background. Why does he get so much attention? And sometimes, now Yaqub alayhi salam is a prophet, and he is a very wise man. He knows how to treat his sons. He knows that. It's not like he is treating them unfairly. He is treating all of them fairly. But sometimes what is fair does not seem fair to the recipient. So, oh, he got this, and we didn't get this. Even though they might have gotten something else. So fairness is not equal to sameness. Being fair does not necessarily mean that everyone gets the exact same thing at the exact same time. There are compensations. Someone gets one thing, and someone gets another thing, but everyone is getting something. Someone gets attention in one way, another person gets attention in another way. But anything that he did, because there was already this feeling built up, anything that Yaqub alayhi salam did for Yusuf alayhi salam, it was seen as too much. So he said, okay, this is a problem. What do we do? Well, the easy thing is just get rid of Yusuf and you've gotten rid of the problem. He is the cause of it. If it weren't for him, we wouldn't have to go through all this frustration. To just eliminate him and the problem is eliminated. And this is how humans think. So they plotted. First it was to kill him. Then they said, no, don't kill him. Go drop him in a well and then leave him for whatever happens. Yusuf alayhi salam is thrown into the well. The brothers now, they have to do this big, massive cover-up story. Because Yaqub alayhi salam was already worried about him. He says, no, I don't know, there's wolves out there. And he could be attacked by a wolf. So they came back and gave the same story. You know how you were afraid that a wolf might catch him? Well, we went off running, and yes, a wolf came and devoured him. And they bring back the shirt of Yusuf alayhi salam covered in blood. And it was sheep's blood. So now Yaqub alayhi salam is seeing his shirt, and the shirt is not torn, nothing is happened. There is no signs of an attack of a wolf. He said, "Bal sawarat lakum anfusukum amra." No, you have plotted something. Okay, I will be patient. So from there, Yusuf alayhi salam is discovered by a traveling caravan. He is picked up, and then people start getting worried that what if somebody starts looking for this child? So the best thing to do is to get rid of him, and get rid of him fast. So while they were going on their way to Egypt, they decided that we're going to sell him in the slave market, sell him off as a slave, and that's it. So that's what they did. And they sold him they wanted to sell him for very, very cheap. When the prime minister of Egypt saw him, or the ruler of Egypt saw him, and he said, this child is being sold for so cheap, and so handsome, so capable, so intelligent. So he brought him into his house. And he kept him, and he looked after him. Now this is all happening in Egypt. And stories of the virtue and the piety of this young man are spreading everywhere. And his master starts trusting him more and more and more and more. And then the whole incident happens with Zulaykha. And then Yusuf alayhi salam is proven innocent. When Yusuf alayhi salam manages to escape from the palace and the master is standing right there, Zulaykha pulls another trick and she says, look, what should be the punishment for someone who is trying to do wrong with your family? She turns the blame on Yusuf alayhi salam. What should be the punishment? Illa an yusjan. He should either be jailed or adabun alim, or be given some very terrible punishment. Yusuf alayhi salam says, no, she was trying to seduce me. Now, it's his word against hers, her word against his. Who is going to testify? Shahida shahidun min ahliha. There was a child there in the castle, a baby. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave that baby the power to speak. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam tells us in the hadith that this was one of the few babies in the history of man that Allah gave them the ability to speak. And that baby said, this is very easy. In kana qamisuhu qudda. If his shirt, look at where his shirt is ripped. If it is ripped from the front, then that means he was coming towards her. He was coming towards her, and he is at fault. He would be lying, she would be speaking the truth. But if the shirt is torn from the back, what kind of person attacks their assailant and tries to grab them and rip their shirt? If the shirt is torn from the back, it means he was running away from her and she was trying to catch him. That's how his shirt got torn. When they looked at the shirt, it was in fact ripped from the back. So now the master of the house is very concerned. He wants to keep this very, very low profile. He wants to put this away. Please don't talk about this. Please don't discuss this. It's a matter of my own reputation. But somehow, as all of this noise happened and the baby spoke and so on and so forth, news leaked out into the servants, and gradually, slowly, people started talking about it. And people started pointing fingers at the woman, that she is trying to seduce her husband's slave. So she tried to teach them a lesson on how powerful the presence of this boy is. She prepares this big feast, this banquet, and there she gives them fruit first and gives everyone a knife. And just when they're about to cut the fruit, she asks Yusuf alayhi salam to go and enter into that room, and they're so bedazzled by his charm, his grace, his looks, that they ended up slicing their fingers and they didn't even notice. They said, oh, this is not a normal human being, this is some kind of an angel. Then they understood the temptation of her point was just to show that what kind of person this is. This is not an ordinary person who can be resisted. Khair, that was her own little effort. But when rumors started spreading and things started going out of control, then the master decided that we should probably put Yusuf alayhi salam away for a little while, because this is going to come back and this is turning into a big scandal, and it looks like I'm not taking any steps. So then Yusuf alayhi salam was put there. And some Mufassirin mention that he actually had him put there. He knew Yusuf alayhi salam was speaking the truth, but he had him put there because had he not gotten him out of his house, she would have kept doing this. So he did it actually for the protection of Yusuf alayhi salam. Khair, while he is in the jail, people are coming to him. People see how pious he is, and they're coming to him with their issues, with their questions. He's giving da'wah there and inviting people towards one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Two men see dreams, they come to him and they relate their dreams. So he tells one of them, look, the ta'weel, the interpretation of your dream is that you're going to be hanged. You're going to be killed. And as for the other one, you're going to be set free. And both of those men were there as they were in jail while their case was being investigated. They were accused of trying to kill the king, trying to poison the king. So one of them was proven innocent, and he was restored to his job, and his job was serving the drinks to the king, serving wine to the king. And the other one, who was the chef, he was proven guilty and he was killed. Now, as he is being released, Yusuf alayhi salam tells him that, look, make mention of me to your master. But the man forgot. The man completely forgot. And then many years passed. The term used is bid'a sinin. He stayed for 7, and bid'a is usually used for somewhere between 3 and 10. The average is 7. He probably stayed for 7 more years after that incident. Then the king sees a dream, and it's a very scary dream. He can't get it out of his head. He calls his people and he says, I need the interpretation of this dream. I am seeing these 7 fat, healthy cows, and then I'm seeing these 7 really thin, weak cows. They're devouring the big cows. And I'm seeing 7 stalks of wheat that are they're rich, they're filled, they look like they are, they're green and lush, but then there are 7 others that are completely withered away, and they don't have any food, any seeds on them. So I need an interpretation. He called all his people, his fortune tellers, his whoever he could, and everyone said, this is just one of those random dreams. Adghathu ahlam. This is one of those random dreams, don't pay attention to it. And we don't know too much about these things. That's when that servant who had been restored to his position, he remembered Yusuf alayhi salam, that how perfectly he gave the interpretation of his dream. So he says, I know the person who's going to tell you what this dream means. Send me to him. So he was sent, and that's when he came and he said, Yusuf ayyuha siddiq, Yusuf, O Siddiq, the one who never lies, the one whose words are always correct, and his interpretations are always correct, and his deeds are always correct. This is Siddiq. Tell us about this dream. So Yusuf alayhi salam gave him first the interpretation of this dream. He said, this is what's going to happen. You are going to have 7 years of prosperity, and they're going to be followed by 7 years of severe famine. This would have been enough. This would have been enough to give the interpretation of the dream. But Yusuf alayhi salam didn't stop there. He said, I'm going to tell you what to do to solve the problem. I'm going to tell you what to do to solve the problem. What you need to do is invest heavily in your farming for the next 7 years. And whatever you are farming, leave it in its skin. Don't break it out. Don't break out the seeds, the grains, and store them like you normally do. I want you to leave them in the natural container that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given it. And keep stocking. Stockpile for 7 whole years. And the beauty of this, the reason for this was that in that state, the grain could actually last for 7 years. And nothing would happen to it. Had they removed the grain and separated it, then it would have spoiled much, much earlier. They would not have had anything 7 years later. So he gave them the trick or the method of stockpiling. And then they started becoming very, very disciplined in giving out and distributing the food. So when all of this happened, then the king was very pleased, And he says that, bring Yusuf to me. Bring him. I want to honor him. I want to do this, this, and this. Yusuf alayhi salam said, no. First, my name must be exonerated. A situation was created because of which I spent all of this time, and I'm happy to spend the rest of my life here. But if I come out, it's going to be on my terms, and those terms are, my name must be completely exonerated. So, those women that were called at that time by Zulaykha, and Zulaykha herself was called and summoned, and the king demanded an answer, tell me what really happened. And then they all testified that no, she was at fault. And she also testified, أَنَا رَاوَدْتُهُ عَنْ نَفْسِهِ. I am the one who tried to seduce him. He was speaking the truth the whole time. And she said, it's time now that I came out with the truth. And I know that someone who lies and betrays never ever succeeds. She became extremely, extremely miserable during this time. There are a lot of riwayat. I don't go into the details of them because most of them are Israeli riwayat. We cannot use it to base a tafsir. So I personally don't delve too much into Israeli riwayat. I try to stay with whatever narrative is in the Quran. But there are a lot of details there of what happened with her. Her life became miserable. She lost her eyesight, and her husband died somewhere between that time and this time. And all of these things happened. Khair. Then the king said that I want you to be with me. I want to give you something, a position. So where should I use you? So Yusuf alayhi salam said, put me in charge of the natural resources of the country. اجعلني على خزائن الأرض. So kind of like the minister of agriculture, you can say. And he said, because I know how to preserve. I have this skill, this knowledge of preservation, preserving resources. So I know how to preserve, and Allah has given me the knowledge of His commandments. Hafidhun alim. So Allah said, look, كَذَلِكَ مَكَّنَّا لِيُوسُفَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. We made this arrangement for Yusuf alayhi salam and positioned him in the world. We gave him that authority. Yusuf alayhi salam did nothing. There were no appeals. There were no demonstrations. There was nothing. In the jail also, he was not protesting. It's quiet. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this arrangement. And a time came when those 7 years were up and the years of famine started. And Egypt, because of the skillful agriculture of Yusuf alayhi salam, Egypt was now in a position to not just feed its own people, but because the famine was widespread, people from the neighboring countries were also coming there for their supply of food. Because that entire part of the world was stricken with drought and famine. And then, lo and behold, the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam coming looking for food. Look at the design of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to give someone honor and respect, He will force everything to happen according to them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will change the conditions of everything so they revolve around that person. So they come looking for food. Now what used to happen there is, in order to get food, you had to register your whole family. You had to register your whole family. Now, when the brothers were leaving, they wanted to take Yusuf alayhi salam's other full brother, Binyamin. Yaqub alayhi salam said, no, there's no way I'm going to send him. You've already done this with his brother. Yaqub alayhi salam, in the meantime, it's another story. He is crying, weeping, and extremely, extremely sad. He can't get Yusuf alayhi salam out of his mind. He's going through a lot of torment. So he does not release Binyamin. When the brothers come and they ask, you have to ask according to how many family members you have. And the rule was, you need to prove that these family members actually exist. So they have to appear. And then the rations will be given to them. All the men must appear. So they had written down Binyamin's name because they needed ration for him and his family as well. but he wasn't there. So, you have a brother. He's your half-brother. And you have his name here. You want ration for him, but I'm not going to give it to you because he's not here. And look, I don't have any problem giving you. You see, I'm giving everyone. I'm giving everyone their rations. I would give it to you, but you have been dishonest in your paperwork. And so until you bring your brother, I can't give you the food. Khair, they went back, they told their father, and in the meantime Yusuf a.s. told his people that give all their money back. Whatever money they brought to pay for that food, put it all back quietly and secretly. They put the money back. He didn't withhold it. He didn't say, no, I'm keeping the money, you go bring your brother. He said, he gave them the money back. When they went back to their father, they said, Father, we weren't given anything because of this issue. Can you please send him? And he said, oh really, you want me to trust you with him like I trusted you with Yusuf before? What protection can you give? Allah is the best of protectors. فَاللَّهُ خَيْرٌ حَافِظٌ وَهُوَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. Then when they opened up their luggage, they found that all of their payment money had been returned. They said, look, Father, we're not lying. Everything was given. The king that man is a very rich, he's a very fair man. He's a very honest man. He's a noble person. He didn't trick us. So then Yaqub a.s. said, okay, I will only send him if you give me a promise, you take an oath that you will absolutely bring him back. Unless such a situation happens that, for example, something happens to all of you. Okay, all of you perish and then he perishes with you. That's a situation that's out of your control, but you will bring him back. They gave their pledge. They sent him. Yaqub a.s. says, look, don't all go into the city together, spread out. Why? Because you will go, all boys, all sons of the same father. You're going to attract the evil eye of people. You're going to attract the jealousy of people. Spread out. So like this, they entered into the city. When Yusuf a.s. sees his brothers coming back the second time, he brings his brother close and tells him that, look, I am your brother. I am your brother. I know you're in distress. Don't worry about what's happened, and don't worry about what's going to happen right now. Just stay calm. So, as they're leaving, he has the king's royal goblet that he drinks from. He has that planted into the luggage of Binyamin. So, just as they're departing, someone calls out that, you thieves, you stole. They said, what are you talking about? We didn't come here to steal. We're not bad people. They said, no, we are missing the king's royal goblet. And whoever presents it, there's a big reward for him. They said, well, look, if you want to search our stuff, by all means, search our stuff. So Yusuf a.s. had his men search everyone else's luggage. At the end, search Binyamin's luggage. And there was the king's royal goblet. There it is. So why did Yusuf a.s. do this? Because the penalty at that time, especially for the people of Canaan, was that if someone stole something from you, and it was proven that they stole from you, then they would have to become your slave for a period of time. So they had asked, okay, fine, if the thief is discovered to be one of you, then what? They said, well, then he has to become your slave, whoever it is. So it was Binyamin's luggage that the goblet was found, so Binyamin then would have to become the slave. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that كَذَلِكَ كِدْنَا لِيُوسُف. This is how we plotted. We made this plan for Yusuf a.s. Otherwise, there was no way that he could have rescued his brother from the other brothers. So now, he is a ruler. He has complete authority. All the food system is in his hand. And the next step that he has achieved is his brother Binyamin is also with him. Then the story goes on. They go back. One of the brothers says, I'm not going back. We've been embarrassed before. We did this with Yusuf. Now we're leaving Binyamin behind. They tried appealing to Yusuf a.s. that keep one of us in his place. He has an old father. He can't live without him. He said, no. So the eldest brother said, I'm not leaving. I'm going to stay here. You guys go back and explain whatever happened. The brothers go back, explain what happened. So Yaqub a.s. became even more sad. And then He cried so much that he lost his eyesight. That's how grieved he was. And even in that state, he was thinking of Yusuf alayhi salam. And finally he told the boys, you go back and look for Yusuf and his brother. Yusuf and his brother? Yusuf died a long time ago. We don't know. Why are you telling us to look for Yusuf? He says, go. Look for Yusuf and his brother. And don't despair of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This message was very important because by now they had written themselves off also. We've killed him. So we're done. So in this word of his, La tay'asu min rawhillah, don't despair of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, was a message to them inside that I know what you've done and you know what you've done, but it's still not too late. So go look for, so now situations are getting worse and worse and worse. And these brothers, they don't even have enough money to pay for the rations that they need. They bring a few things from the house and they say that, look, we're here again for food. We don't have enough payment, but please give us, as much as you possibly can. May Allah reward you, this and this and this. So now Yusuf alayhi salam is watching them, observing them, and he says, so, what did you do with Yusuf and his brother? And that's when everything clicked to them. And then they said, you're Yusuf? He said, yes, I'm Yusuf. He revealed himself. And then they said, look, Allah honored you. At the end, after all our efforts, notwithstanding all our plots, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still chose you and gave you preference. He said, look, I'm not here to vent or to put you down or to admonish you. La tathriba alaykum al-yawm. There's nothing. I have nothing to say. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive you. Now, take this shirt of mine and give it to my father. Put it on his face. As soon as you put it back on his face, his eyesight will return. The moment that caravan left back, and he said, now you need to bring everyone. Bring my father, bring my mother, bring everyone, bring your families. Come to Egypt. When the caravan leaves, heading back towards Palestine, Yaqub alayhi salam says, Inni la ajidu riha Yusuf. I smell the fragrance of Yusuf. Lawla an tufannidun. I know you're going to call me crazy, but I said, and they said, yes, you're just lost. You're an old man. You've lost your mind. You're in the same mindset. But when the brothers came and they put the shirt over his face, his eyesight returned, and then he said, you see, I told you that I know I have knowledge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you do not have. I knew the whole time that Yusuf was alive. I knew all of this was going on in the background. So then they come to Yusuf alayhi salam to Egypt with their families. Who are they? The sons of Yaqub alayhi salam, the sons of Israel. Now all 12 sons of Israel, of Yaqub alayhi salam, are in Egypt. Yusuf alayhi salam brings his parents and puts them on the throne with him, and they all prostrate to him. This was a prostration, not obviously of worship, but a prostration of ta'zeem, of reverence, which was allowed in that sharia. And then Yusuf alayhi salam recounted the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And no hard feelings, no bitterness. He is just thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oh Allah, you gave me this knowledge. You taught me the interpretation of dreams. And you joined me with my family even though من بعد أن نزغ الشيطان بيني وبين إخوتي. It was shaitan that was doing all of this. They probably didn't even know what they were doing. Shaitan did all of this. But oh Allah, you have united all of us. And then he made lots of dua. So this is the gist of this story. And there are many tafasir of the Quran. And when they talk about this story, they open up the lessons. At every step there is a lesson. But interesting thing here is that there are a few themes that run common throughout the whole story. One of them is dreams. So it starts with a dream. Yusuf alayhi salam is saved because of the interpretation of dreams. And at the end, those brothers, all 11 of his brothers and his parents bowing to him, is the interpretation of the dream. So I'll just mention really quickly that true dreams, they're from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them. and they do have a significance, they do have an importance. However, you cannot base any hukum on a dream. You cannot base any ruling if something is, for example, someone sees a dream that someone is stealing. It is not allowed, they are not allowed to make this judgment about them that such and such person is a thief. Or something was stolen and someone saw in their dream that so and so is stealing it. This is not proof to say that, oh yes, it must be so and so. So no ruling or judgment can be derived from dreams. However, these are mubashirat. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam calls them mubashirat. These are glad tidings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So someone might see Jannah, someone might see Jahannam, someone might see prophets alayhimu salatu wassalam, someone might see angels, someone might see Sahaba. They might see beautiful things, and when that happens, we should thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving that to us, because it is in fact a ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then sometimes there are bad dreams, and these bad dreams are brought often by shayateen. Shaitan comes and plays with a person's mind while they're sleeping and introduces all kinds of things. Sometimes the object is just to scare the person, and sometimes it's to confuse the person. Sometimes it's to disturb their sleep. So the Prophet ﷺ has taught us certain a'mal that we're supposed to do. If someone sees a bad dream, turn around, blow the other side, seek protection in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from shaitan, and so on and so forth. And you never share bad dreams. Don't share bad dreams. Don't talk about it to anyone. And even good dreams, like I mentioned earlier, you only share it with someone who is very sincere and dear, or someone who has the knowledge to interpret it. Now the next question is, how do you interpret dreams? Where does this knowledge come from? The truth is that this knowledge is wahbi. It comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There isn't a book that you can study that will teach you how to interpret dreams. There are many books out there that give interpretations of dreams. These books will not necessarily teach you how to interpret dreams. Every dream is different. There are a lot of elements. Who is seeing the dream? In what state are they seeing it? What time of the day was it? In fact, what they ate before they slept, how much they ate, what time they slept, what was the cycle of sleeping before that? There are a lot of things. What is the status of that person in knowledge, in nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Many different things, elements come into the interpretation of dreams, but it does require absolutely deep knowledge of the Quran and its tafsir, deep knowledge of hadith and its meanings, and very deep knowledge of the Arabic language. These three things have been mentioned by ulama as absolute musts. Then after that, Allah will open it up to some people, and He will still not open it. There are many people who are great scholars, absolutely pillars of knowledge. It doesn't mean they know how to interpret dreams. So this is something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens up to some people. My Shaykh, Hazrat Maulana Yusuf Sahab, Yusuf Mutala Sahab, probably in this day and age, he is the greatest interpreter of dreams. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given it to him. And he interprets dreams so fluidly and so quickly, and his interpretations are always true. So that's an example of someone. And people asked him, other shuyukh asked him, Shaykh, where did you get this knowledge? He said, this is not something you can read in a book. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open it up to whoever He wants. There is a book about the interpretations of Ibn Sirin, and this is one of the very famous books, Ta'birul Ru'ya. It's been translated into Urdu and to English, but I must say that there is doubt whether this book can be correctly attributed to Ibn Sirin rahmatullah alayhi or not. There is a great deal of doubt that were those actually his interpretations, is this actually coming from him? Simply because there is no sanad of this. Whenever there is a report from a tabi'i, there is a sanad going to that tabi'i. So-and-so heard from him, so-and-so heard from that person, so-and-so heard from that person, then it was documented. And in the era of tabi'is also, a lot of documentation was taking place. This was the age of the transcription of ahadith and narrations and so on and so forth. But we don't really find any sanad to Ibn Sirin. So to rely entirely on that book for interpretations of dreams, and then to think that this was given by Ibn Sirin, it's questionable. Khair, I know Surah Yusuf took up all our time this morning. We will be reading Surah Ar-Ra'd as well, Surah Ibrahim as well, but we did not get the opportunity to go into the details. These are also very powerful Makki surahs. with great message. Surah Ra'd revolves around the azama, the grandeur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even the words in Surah Ar-Ra'd are extremely, extremely powerful. Very powerful words. Qudrat of Allah, the ways of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a surah that focuses on that. And Surah Ibrahim also talks about the ways of Allah. It talks about what's going to happen in Jahannam. I'll mention just one little excerpt of Surah Ibrahim. It's Saturday, we have a little bit of time. When shaitan is cast into Jahannam, along with all his followers, a mimbar made of the fire of Jahannam is going to be erected for him. And there he's going to give a khutbah, he's going to give a talk to all the residents of Jahannam. And what is he going to say? He's going to say, Inna Allaha wa'adakum wa'ad al-haq. Oh people, you heard, while you were in the world, you heard the promises of Allah. And today you have seen that every one of those promises have come true. Promises for the righteous, for the pious, promises for the evildoers, for the disbelievers. You've seen it all. وَوَعَدْتُكُمْ. I also made you many promises. فَأَخْلَفْتُكُمْ. Today you have seen that every one of my promises was a lie. What was the promise of shaitan? If you commit such and such sin, you will have great pleasure and success. If you do this, if you cheat in this way, you'll flourish in that way. If you say this today, then so and so will be impressed. If you say that if you change the truth here, then that's going to happen. I was the one putting all of these thoughts in your minds. But today you've seen every one of those was a lie. But here's the thing. وَمَا كَانَ لِيَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ سُلْطَانٍ. I didn't have any power over you. In other words, I did not force you to do any of that. I did not have that power to make you commit a sin. إِلَّا أَن دَعَوْتُكُمْ. I invited you to the sin. I called you. I enticed you. I made it seem appealing to you. فَاسْتَجَبْتُمْ لِي. And every time I did that, you responded. That's why you're here. You did not respond to the call of Allah, but you responded to my call. I took you away from such and such good deed. I created obstacles between you and that deed. I put all kinds of excuses in your minds to not do that deed. I put all kinds of accesses between you and sinful things. I made it look so appealing and accessible. But I wasn't controlling you. You were listening to me this whole time. So, oh my fellow residents, he's going to say, don't blame me. فَلَا تَلُومُونِي وَلُومُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Only blame yourselves. مَا أَنَا بِمُصْرِخِكُمْ وَمَا أَنْتُمْ بِمُصْرِخِي. Today, I can't do anything for you, and you can't do anything for me. So, this khutbah, this kind of opening ceremony will be conducted by Iblis himself in Jahannam. So, there is no one really to blame. There is no one to blame for falling behind in deeds but ourselves. We, because we're weak, we fall victim to the whispers of our nafs and the whispers of shaitan, and doing a commandment of Allah, fulfilling it it seems so burdensome, so difficult, so awkward, so inconvenient, and if I do this, then that's going to happen. If I do that, then that's going to happen. It seems so distant and so difficult. And to do the wrong thing sometimes seems so easy and so convenient. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from the tricks of Iblis and his armies. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to build resistance against him and his efforts through this beautiful month of Ramadan, and enable us to take advantage of these precious days and nights. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala